Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. I'm Malik, Managing Director at RBHR Consultancy in Yeovil. So some familiar faces and names, so that's really good, and some new ones, which is also really good. I have got some slides to share with you, but my plan is not to have a monologue for 30 or 40 minutes, but to share some things with you and maybe have a bit of a discussion around this. But I think it's I'm going to try and share my screen, so hopefully you will see this. Come on. There we go. Oh, that's better. Can you all see my screen now? Perfect. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just getting ready to transition back into the workplace. And obviously, because I'm an HR professional, from a people management perspective, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of health and safety implications in here. So we'll be touching on that. But a little tiny bit about RBHR. We are specialists in providing peace of mind for your people management matters. And I'm very fortunate to have a team of HR training and recruitment professionals. So everything all under one roof. So that's a little bit about us. And a new brand, we've been really busy during lockdown. And a new website in the offing. So my plan as we come out of lockdown and transition into going back to whatever normal becomes is to really turn a new chapter on the Rebecca Bevins business with me as the managing director and my team. So a little bit about that as we go through. So running order. I've broken this up into 3 areas. So just thinking a little bit about the practicalities, you know, how do we welcome that new normal back in? Talk a little about the people, a bit about support, a bit about management of the team and some procedures. So I will touch a bit on employment law and some of the considerations there, but it's not an employment law update. And it's not an update on furlough and flexible furlough schemes, but we'll touch on all of that. I've tried to keep what I'm talking about different to what I know some of the other speakers have done over the weeks and months, just to make that different. And obviously at the end, some time for questions, but I will come back to you midpoint as we go through the slides, just to make sure you're all still awake, you're all with me. And you're getting what you need from this. So let's dive in. A little bit about practicalities. So how do we welcome in this new normal? Well, the government have been very helpful and they've given us 5 steps to working safely. I'm sure you all are completely au fait and familiar with this. So we need to carry out a risk assessment. We need to make sure we've got the cleanliness, the hygiene, the hand washing all in place. Working from homes here for some time, so helping and supporting staff to be able to do that. And we still need to maintain that social distancing where possible, although there have been some further updates to that over recent days. And obviously where we can't keep 2 meters apart, we need to show we've put some mitigation in terms of managing that transmission risk, which is where our risk assessment comes in. So those are 5 steps. I've put some things that I think you need to consider. So more from a people management perspective, or taking some of that good practice guide in terms of practicalities of all of this. And I think I would suggest that you consider these very carefully as you're planning to bring people back to work or planning to phase people back to work. And the first one is it essential? Is it essential to have everybody in the office from day one? Running your production line or whatever your business might be doing, in the shop, in the restaurant, in the cafe. So can people continue to work from home? If they can, they probably should continue to do that, or maybe consider a phased rotation of that. Obviously, those who can't, again, is it essential? Could the business continue to use the furlough scheme or the flexible furlough scheme? I think I took out all the FFS abbreviations just so that we don't get muddled with what I might be meaning that. But yeah, flexible furloughing scheme for longer, if that helps to put in those safety measures and ensure that you've got the necessary guidance, consultation, signage, markings and everything else to consider there. The likelihood is that for most businesses there's going to be a combination of the two, so some working from home, some going back into the organisation. Second thing to consider is it sufficiently safe? So thinking about our duty of care, we in normal times we've always got that duty of care to our employees, and we need to identify and manage risks and put any mitigations in place to reduce those. It is probably a very good idea to do a return to work in a gradual or phased approach. The benefit of that is it enables us to test our health and safety measures and our practices, and just make sure it's gonna run as we envisaged it would. Because with anything, once you put it into practice, there are often other things that come forward that perhaps we haven't considered. And the third thing to consider is it mutually agreed? It's always a good thing when dealing with anything to do with staff or employees is to communicate and to get their buy-in. I'd be interested to take your views and observations on this, but listening to any concerns, there is still some fear out there, and I'm sure this exists in your businesses as well. But if there are concerns, listen to those, try and identify the best solutions that can be put in place, and just make sure that you continue to give feedback, all the way along. Think about any concerns such as commuting, getting into the workplace. So if you do have staff who are using public transport, what does that look like? Do you need a staggered start and end time to facilitate the 2-metre social distancing and reduce bottlenecks as people are coming into work? All things to take into account. And perhaps looking at scheduling and shift patterns, adjusting those either temporarily or perhaps more permanently, because I think this is going to be with us for a while. So the other thing to really make clear is anything around your risk assessments, these are shared with staff. They're visible as they're updated or modified, refined, they continue to be shared with staff, and you get some feedback to demonstrate that A, they have read them, and B, they're going to abide by them and flag any issues as may become aware. So I'm going to show you an image of an office, great office space. Looks lovely. I'd quite like to work there. But is it COVID-19 compliant? That is the question. You should be able to take yourselves off mute if anybody wants to chip in. That is your cue for somebody to chip in.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Okay. Anybody else? Any other advances on no, it's not?
I agree, it's not.
Not. Okay. Why is it not?
They're too close,
Okay.
the desks.
So if we had, so particularly in the foreground here, we've got 3 desks. So if everyone was sat at their desk, they wouldn't be 2 meters apart, correct? But if we did some kind of staggering or changing of working patterns, maybe some people working from home, we could probably make that compliant. But you're right, if particularly these 2 desks in the forefront, if those 2 members of staff were working side by side, they wouldn't be 2 meters, but we may just about get away with it if we had them sitting back to back. But again, there would be...
Sorry, can I just come in there? Just surely that when the one person moves, he's then walking within 1 meter or 2 meters of the other person.
Yeah. So we've got to keep 2 meters where possible, and obviously the 1 meter plus bit has come back in. I would suggest that if that setup was not changed at all, you're probably only really able to get one person working in that space and them feel completely comfortable with that. Coupled with the hygiene and the hand sanitization, and making sure we're not sharing workspaces, because clearly that is going to add some additional complexity to and risk associated with potential transmission. Anyone else got anything else they want to say about office space and just the practicalities of getting people back into work? No. Good. Okay. Let's move on to. I've put together some actions and some thoughts in terms of for each of my 3 sections with some links. I will share these slides afterwards. So you have those to hand, but this is just a recap really of the 5 steps that the government have published. There is some help with risk assessments if you've not already seen it. The Health and Safety Executive have put together some very useful tools and template documents to help you to do that. So no need to really, I think if you follow the guidance, most of us are going to be able to do what we need to do with the tools that have been provided. Think about the hand washing signage, you know, different options there. Perhaps an alternative to an alcohol gel in terms of a hand sanitizer for some reasons around, you know, allergies and perhaps some people not wanting to use alcohol on their hands if they have any particular issues with alcohol. And I've seen a few odd queries there. They are odd, but there are alternatives to the alcohol-based solutions as well. Keeping that 2 meter social distancing where possible, and where it's not, making sure we're managing that transmission risk. I've also got a planning tool which I'll share with you, which is around trying to ascertain in an objective way whether work is essential, sufficiently safe, and mutually agreed, which again I hope you find really helpful. So moving into the people element of my slides, and just thinking about the practicalities of returning to work. I think it depends which of these 3 scenarios your business finds itself in. You know, one, your business could not be training at all and all staff be furloughed. And there are a few businesses who I'm aware of who are in that situation. majority of businesses, or at least the ones that I've been speaking to, are trading, but maybe on a limited basis or a reduced basis. So some staff furloughed, some staff working from home, and some on premise. And there are some businesses who are trading fully. Again, less of those. But with some adaptations, they have they've got everybody working in the office or working from home. But we have some practical considerations. I mean, this lady in the image here has a child, so clearly trying to do some work from home, but juggling childcare commitments and you know, with children perhaps not at school again yet. So some other things to consider. I mean, this lady sat on her bed. It's surprising how many people do not have what we would ordinarily regard as a suitable working space at home. And you know, for a temporary period, the what we would normally do or maybe turn a blind eye to as we've gone through this reactionary mode into something that may carry on for some considerable time, is checking that home working situation and doing some display screen equipment checklist and protocol around that, and document it would be my advice. My office has been ravaged by the team who have taken their setup home with them and reset their office setup up at home, which again has been really useful. So chairs and desks and screens have all gone home with them. And just check, you know, who's got what, because obviously when we come back, obviously we want to make sure we're getting everything that's gone back again. We at RBHR have been doing some floor planning. So again, as part of the risk assessment, I've drawn out a floor plan with where the desks are and what works and what doesn't in terms of the 2 metre, because you know, as we said in our brief discussion, that is optimum, and if at all possible, that is what we should be striving to do. Anything less than that, I think we could see some issues with the test and trace service if there are any infections within the workplace. So minimising the risk, think about the hygiene protocols. So a simple example, you know, that might be that as soon as anyone comes on premise, you ask them to either wash their hands with soap and water, or use some alcohol hand sanitisation product. And again, as they leave, so they bring nothing in and they take nothing away. You know, your cleaning protocols, wiping down multi-touch surfaces are going to be really important, again, as much as anything else, to make people feel safe and make people feel that the business is doing everything they can. And there are many products that can be used to do that effectively, and again, the same with desk setup, seating, you know, any surfaces that people are touching, and perhaps utilising some pens for things like printing interfaces, screens on those, the soft tip pens, again, just to stop people touching with their hands, or if that's not suitable or appropriate for your organisation, again, just making sure that things are cleaned down afterwards. Considering whether meetings are appropriate, how you're going to conduct meetings, you know, what your travel arrangement's going to be. You know, are you going to expect staff to go on the site with clients? You know, what are those working arrangements? Are you going to get everybody back? Are you going to working patterns. How are you going to manage that work anxiety? I dare say, as we get into discussions and questions, there will be some concerns with staff returning to work. And again, with PPE, is that something you're going to provide? What are you going to provide? How are you going to do that? Does that apply to staff and visitors? Just staff, just visitors? You know, what does that look like? Have you got supplies? Can you get your hands on what you need? Again, I think the supplies seem to be better now than they were initially, but again, as businesses are planning to go back to work, some forward planning is going to be key there. I've said it before, but communicating and keeping staff on board with this and engaged with it is going to be key. You know, telling, selling, gaining buy-in, getting their thoughts on it is going to be really useful to help with dealing with anxiety and fears around going back to work. So briefing staff is going to be really key, and documenting that you've done it, ensuring that you understand their situation. You know, are they still shielding? Although that is going to come to an end as we go into August. You know, have they got childcare, elder care commitments? Is there anything else that is going to make it slightly more complex in terms of coming back to work? And again, what can we do to manage that? What can we do to allay people's fears and anxieties? How can we encourage managers and support managers to have those return to work one-to-ones, perhaps focusing on health and safety and well-being, dealing with that anxiety? You know, do line managers need any support in doing that? You know, how do we do that consistently? So whether we've got manager A, B or C conducting those, that there's a similar approach, a company approach to that. Perhaps consider a reorientation or a reinduction of staff where necessary. So yeah, for instance, if we've got a business, say, where we've had to replan our warehousing or our office structures, protocols in terms of how we move around that space, is a reorientation needed in terms of what is and isn't appropriate. Again, how do we communicate that? How do we document that? You know, how do we be inclusive? How do we make sure we've got everyone on board with this? And how do we deal with people who haven't stopped working? You know, are they okay? Are they getting supported? Are they having some time to recharge and build their energy levels back up? Because it's been pretty intensive. You know, I've worked all the way through, and I've worked harder than ever before, so I'm sure probably most of you have. But again, are we looking after ourselves? Who's checking in on us? So just some things to consider around that. So another bit of interactivity, I'd like your thoughts on this, but you know, masks, what are our thoughts on this? So aside from care settings, it's not mandated, but any fears or anxieties, concerns around PPE, masks, protective equipment, whether that be gloves, you know, sanitizing the workplace, any worries around any of that?
I think, just could I just come back to your previous point, Ben, actually, in terms of people's level of provision at home and in terms of home working arrangements. I think we've got to be very careful to engage with all our staff, because, as you say, that different levels will have different level of provision at home. We've got some of our graduates and technicians who have gone back to their school days and working out of their bedrooms.
Yes.
They roll out of bed at 9 o'clock, and they sit in their desk, which is the corner of their bedrooms, and they do work, and they roll back into bed at the end of their working day, and it's not a very good differentiation between work and life balance. And actually, those are the ones who actually have a greater priority back in the office than we do.
Yes.
And we've got very careful. Often we plan these things as a group of managers sat around a desk and go, "Oh, we're okay. We're happy to work at home." We can't forget about those guys working in those arrangements too. I think actually linking to this question, different people have different levels of anxiety, and that comes down to your personal circumstance. And again, that's something we've got to engage with across the piece. I'm quite relaxed about it, if I'm honest. But I think we live in quite a rural area, and it's being the big broad outdoors. But actually, within towns and cities, there's a lot more anxiety. And we've got to consider those at all levels, really.
Yeah, absolutely, and your point around the ability to work from home, I think that is key in terms of prioritizing those who perhaps don't have that perfect setup, because we do still have a duty of care to make sure that they are their health and safety is protected while they're at home, and that they're getting up and moving around. Sorry, was somebody going to say something there? Might have just been a bit of feedback. So yeah, some considerations there with all of these things, and it will be different for all of you. There's no one size fits all with this. I think it is about thinking about the practicalities, thinking about you prioritising some employees and workers over others, and getting them back, and that being around safety, and not just about physical safety, but also about mental health and safety as well.
Ben, can I jump in? It's Maria O'Sullivan. I think not only is it the physical safety, but I think, as Alan just mentioned, it's the mental safety as well, and the well-being. When people are working and sleeping and living in the same room, then that doesn't do well for them at all. We're very fortunate in that our guys are working from home, and they have an office, a separate room for an office, so we don't have that problem. But I'm very aware that even with that, there is the communication. We have Zoom meetings every day with all our staff, just for social engagement, because we don't have that. When you're sitting across from somebody in the same office, you naturally talk about what you've done the night before or whatever. And if people are working alone in their homes or in their home office, then they miss that. So I think it's really important to have that experience, and Zoom or whatever medium one uses, the video and the face-to-face is really important.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And every day in my team starts with a Teams call, because we are a Microsoft house. We have all the 365 stuff, so that's our preference. But we do also use Zoom. And I was saying to Brooke before you joined, I really don't know what we would have all done without the technology. It has been an absolute lifeline, and not just from a work setting, but in our personal lives as well. Keeping in touch with family and friends, checking in on mum and dad, who both live on their own, and my case, are you okay, have you got food, and all of that kind of stuff, particularly early on. But it's good to see people, isn't it? We need that. Really key. Okay, so
hello.
Yes, hello, Fiona.
Hi, I'm from I'm chief executive at a charity called Reminiscence Learning, dementia charity. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I couldn't put up Reminiscence Learning because I'm on an iPad and it didn't seem to want to do it. But anyway, we're talking about masks and things as well, and that's one of our biggest concerns, because obviously we're working with people with dementia and their care. And we've all actually, I kept all my staff on, I didn't furlough anybody. We've all been working from home. We've been doing care calls, video calls, We've been doing live sessions every day. So twice a day, we do live Facebook sessions for people to access. So activities. So we're cooking in our kitchens and doing everything else. We're, you know, reading poetry, or we're doing whatever it is to just keep people engaged. And obviously, when they're seeing us on the screen, we don't have a mask on, and we wear our uniforms as well to keep that continuity, because it's so important for people with dementia. We've just put together a strategy at the moment, which is to try and, well, from next week onwards, our plan is to go into people's homes. And we've got this great dilemma of do we wear the mask, don't we wear the mask, should we wear a visor, shouldn't we wear a visor, how long do we stay, you know, do we have a drink with them, don't we have a drink with them? There's loads and loads with us. And in terms of the mask bit, it's a bit, you know, I just can't see that the individuals we're going to be working with are going to actually be able to cope with the fact that they need to see a familiar face. They can't remember who we are properly anyway. So to put a mask on is going to be even worse. And we keep saying it's personal preference. This is what we're saying with the staff. It's your own choice. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. And I know it's getting all in place, all the risk assessments and everything. But I don't know if anybody else has got any helpful or wonderful advice that I can just take to my Zoom meeting at 12 o'clock, which I'm doing with them, our regular team meeting. So
I suppose, can I comment on that?
Cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Tim. Yeah, far away.
Yeah, you've got looking at your screen, your picture, you've got the one on the right, the woman with the face mask where you can't see her mouth, whereas you've got the others, which are the ones that go over their head. They're more transparent, you can still see them, you can still convey emotions through it.
Absolutely.
And for the people that, you know, in the dementia bracket with possibly hard of hearing as well, it's more important to see the face, to see the mouth moving, to be able to potentially read the lips as well. So although it's a bit over the top, you know, the third guy with the box, the transparent guard, I would see that just as good as the full covering of the woman on the end. But it gives you the ability with those people to be able to have that emotional communication through the face still.
And I think that's going to be really important for your service users, Fiona, that they can see that that friendly face and the emotion and as Tim says, the you know, potentially the lip reading as well. Just watching the news and things and seeing what other businesses are doing. Some of the shops that were opening up were using visors and no face mask. I think you're right in that in terms of the risk assessment, it has to be it has to be personal preference. Some people will want everything. You may decide as a business that you have a minimum requirement. So if you went for visors, for example, so that you know, I mean, the picture I've chosen is just to provoke some discussion, really. It's not designed to be funny, because none of this is funny, but you know, something to cover your you know, your face and stop direct contact with any particles that might be coming out of another human being is going to be better protection than nothing at all. But and it's perhaps a middle ground that you're not, you know, you're not kind of taking away the emotional contact, but you are still having some health and safety provision in there. It should help to reduce anxiety. I think coming up with a plan and approach to whether you have a drink, you know, within somebody's home, how you deal with that is again, you know, part of your risk assessment that I think you should document and clearly communicate with your team, and maybe get their thoughts on it. You know, using them as a way of establishing some consensus in terms of what they think will work and what won't work.
I think it's we do actually something called, we got to Forest School with some of our younger, more physically well people with dementia, which we just started last week. Well, obviously that's in an outdoor space, but my son's a Forest School leader, but also my daughter-in-law's a teacher, a primary school teacher, and it just seems really weird that the teaching staff, none of the teaching staff are wearing anything at all, visors, nothing. And I mean, they're making contact with, I know they're in their bubbles, but they're still seeing other teachers, and it just seems like feels a bit strange, because I feel in a way I want to say, let's just go with it and let's not worry, you know, let's go with the PPE in a way, but not over the top. But there's this the teacher thing, and the you know, I know it's to do with the younger children, but the teachers are older people as well sometimes, aren't they? So
yes they are. Yeah,
so I'm going on another tangent slightly, but
I mean, it's a good point.
Yeah,
it is, and I think I mean, I've got some teachers in my network, and we've had some interesting discussions over a gin and tonic and a Zoom call, but because you know, again, you're covering your face, it's going to be really difficult in a school setting, and I think that would you know, have many you know, create as many problems as it solves. So it's a hard question to answer, and I think you're thinking all the right things. I would encourage you to talk to your team, get their views on it, either collectively or get them to contact you one-to-one if they've got any particular concerns they don't want to raise in front of the whole team.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's going to be tricky, but there are lots of options out there, and maybe the visor is a way forward for you, or something to talk about at 12 o'clock. See what they think. So just around this section of my slides off, my suggested actions around people, you know, you can't communicate enough. Communicate. It whatever you do, however much you do, it won't be enough for somebody somewhere in your organisation. And think about whether that's verbal, written. You know, the different types of media are important there as well, and all HR people love things to be documented, for obvious reasons, because you can demonstrate if push comes to shove, or if somebody questions what you've done, why you did it at any point in the future, you've got some document trail. You know, you've been clear about what your expectations are as business, and it doesn't need to be you know, War and Peace, but maybe some very clear instructions, sharing that risk assessment, that kind of thing. Gain agreement wherever possible, and again, document that. Really good practice. Publish your plans, your risk assessments, your ways of working, and all your expectations in an easy to digest format would be my recommendation. And consider how you engage and re-engage your people. This is going to be tricky, and I want to talk a bit more about that as we kind of come to the end of my slides. But I feel that's going to be the next challenge for us as managers. But just kind of going into my last section, and I want to keep this fairly brief, because I'm going to share some updates with you, and we wrote a very thorough employment law update in April that we published, and I'm just going to share the link with you, rather than go through it all now, because I really don't think there's any need. And if anyone has any questions, me and my team are always happy to talk to any organisation, client or otherwise, and always an initial discussion is free. There is no cost for picking the phone up and having a chat. If we can help you or guide you, we will. Whether that leads to a sale or not, because it's not all about that, and that's not why I'm doing this. But I think check your procedures. You will do anyway. I know you will, but you know, this is the time. You know, check that you have got your written agreements in place for staff that you have furloughed. If you didn't get wet signatures when you furloughed them, there's probably a little bit of auditing and paperwork to do as people come back. It would be good to just get that all signed and sealed and properly stored away, so if HMRC come knocking, we've got it all there. Have a look at your policies and procedures, your risk assessments, make sure that they're fit for purpose. You will have all of these in place, but just make sure that they are they're up to the minute and they're communicated or re-communicated with staff. So if your contracts allow, and only if they allow, if things, depends how the next few months go, it's difficult to plan, but if your contracts allow, if you have a short time working clause, then it might be something that you can use. We've got the flexible furlough scheme for any staff you have furloughed for the minimum 3-week period up to today. So today is the cut-off. If you hadn't furloughed staff by the 10th of June, you've missed the window for the flexible furlough scheme. But again, if reducing hours helps to save some pennies in the business, then it might be a really good thing to consider. You know, restructuring redundancies, thinking about shielding and bereavement, and holiday, how you're going to use holiday. It is a bit of a ticking time bomb. I know the law's changed. We can carry it over, but to just let that run and run, I think will just generate problems for the future. So maybe consider setting an expectation for the business that a certain amount of holiday is used by a certain point within the year. If you communicate that with staff at least double the time you're expecting them to take, then you're perfectly within your rights to do that. But again, you know, do it with consensus, but maybe picking a point that by the end of December, you're going to expect, you know, X or Y amount of holiday to be used, just as an example. I'm just going to keep this really high level, but this hasn't gone away. There were quite a lot of employment law changes in April this year.
Ben, can I just ask about holidays, please? Yeah. Because we've had sort of almost a 50-50 break in between people working full-time and those that have been on furlough, we've obviously had a few comments from the people that have been working full-time that the other people have been on holiday for 3 months. And from a work perspective as well, it's going to be quite difficult because basically no one's taken any holiday for 3 months, and we're going to have a bit of a conflict, I think, if people come back to work and want to start taking holiday straight away, if you see what I mean, and then the conflict between the furloughed and the furloughed staff.
Yeah.
And so, because legally we can't change their holidays for this year and reduce them down to the basic or anything like that, can we? We can't be seem to be changing contracts or anything.
No, but you can keep staff furloughed, but insist that they take holiday as long as you give them the appropriate notice. That is possible.
You can insist they take holiday when they're on furlough still. Right. Okay.
You would need to pay them at their contractual rate for the holiday.
Yes, we've been paying them full anyway, making up the 20% anyway.
Yeah. So that is possible. That is what some businesses have done. But
Okay.
a bit like thinking about the return to work and who you prioritise to go back into the office based on, you know, setup and things. I think those who've been working all the way through and haven't been furloughed, so haven't had a break, maybe looking at them to take some time off first, if that is possible and the business can stand it. That is prioritised, and you use the people coming back from furlough to support releasing some people who just need a bit of a recharge. It would be my thoughts, because yes, you are going to have some concerns, I think, being raised by those who've been working flat out all the way through.
So can we legally say to the people that have been furloughed that the holidays they've accrued during their furlough have deemed as being taken?
No. So if you want any member of staff, whether furloughed or not, to take holiday when you dictate, you can do that as an employer. But if you were asking somebody to take a week's holiday, you'd have to give them 2 weeks notice of them taking that week's holiday.
Okay.
That is the general rule. And if they are furloughed, you could give them notice to take holiday, but it would have to be thinking ahead and planning ahead for that, and again gaining some mutual agreement. But
yes, okay. So that's for furloughed and non-furloughed staff.
Yeah, furloughed and non-furloughed
holiday
staff.
To spread it out a bit. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Hello, we actually did this. So at the beginning of June, we let our staff who were furloughed know that we were looking at them taking a week's holiday for this week now, and all emailed them and confirmed and spoke to them all individually to check they were happy with it. And everybody was more than happy with it, to be honest. Yeah, we had no problems with it at all.
Good. That's really good to hear, Chantal. That really is good, and it's surprising, isn't it? Most people have, in my experience at least, the organisations that I've been working with, staff do seem to be willing to be flexible and to support their organisation.
A few of them actually said it eased their guilt as well, that they weren't doing anything, that they felt like they were giving something back. Which made a difference to that, how they personally felt being furloughed.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I mean, just being furloughed, the kind of conversations that I've been having is that is helping the business, because ultimately the business is getting 80% back, or it has been getting 80% back, plus the extra bits, the nick and the pensions kind of coming back through as well from the government. So if work has reduced, that is helping, but of course it depends which, where you're looking in on that, and again, I'm focusing my view of that on the organisation, but what about the employee? And that's interesting that you say that, and it's interesting that it works, because it's and you've not had a lot of pushback, but some of the queries I'm starting to see now is businesses going back to staff saying, right, we need you back, and some of them being a bit shocked at being asked to go back to work before November, because they were expecting to be furloughed out to the end of October. Well, that may be for some people, but it also, some businesses are starting to ramp back up again. Things are starting to pick back up, and we need our teams back, or at least some of them. Good, that's good. I'm glad holiday is being managed in most cases. So a quick run through on the changes that came into effect on the 6th of April, but it is in my guide. I will give this to you. There's a bit of a snippet about each one of them, and there is information out there on any of these, but parental bereavement and payout came in April. Just think about GDPR. GDPR is still there, particularly when we think about data and using data remotely. Is everything in order? You know, have you spoken to your IT provider? Are they ensuring everything is shipshape and as secure as it can be? The information and consultation agreements around unions, and some changes came into effect there in terms of the numbers needed for consultation. Some tax changes on termination payments. So this is around the 30,000 threshold. Some changes around written statements of terms. So there's the time frame in terms of when those written statement of terms or contracts of employment need to be issued. So it's a day one right now. But also there are some requirements around what needs to be included within those. And again, I've got some detail that will help support you with that, and just check that you have got that all in place. There is equal pay for agency workers, just be mindful of that. The EU settled or the settlement scheme. So this is if you have any EU nationals who work in your business, just making sure they've got the right to remain. And again, the documentation is all in place there. It's relatively straightforward. You just need to have a matrix in terms of your staff who are impacted by this, and making sure that that's covered off, and take a snapshot of the government webpage once those checks have been done. Save it on their file, just again in case there are any checks, or when the checks come. So leave to remain is kind of covered within that, and the IR35 reforms, okay, that's been postponed, but lots of chat around that at the moment in the news. Certainly in terms of people management news, if you're following any of that, you know, how much it's going to impact staff. I mean, we've yet to see. So that's a bit of a rundown on the employment law. I'm not going to say it, but we also got the B word to think about. You know, that is still on the horizon. It's, you know, everything else that we've been reacting to is taken preference, and rightly so. But the changes are still key there too. And again, I will share the employment law update on that. So a little bit of a roundup in terms of actions around your procedures. Just check that they're fit for purpose. Check your contracts and employment are compliant, and that you are issuing them at the right time. Review your handbook. Is there anything else that needs to be incorporated within that? Do you need to do some communication around any of these things with your teams? The chances are that you probably do. You know, keep it up to date. If you need any help with that, you know, my team and I can help with that. It's one of the things we've been doing an awful lot of since March, is looking at this. So you know, keep that in mind. Final kind of question, really, you know, what's your feel? I know we've gone through that quite quickly, but do you feel that your procedures are largely in place, you know, with a few bits and bobs changed, re-communication of existing, and any changes to particularly hand washing, hygiene, and the practicalities of coming back to work? Is there some work still to do? Have you been making a list as we've been talking? I don't know. But we're here to help. I'm going to share some links, but we are getting to the end of my slides, and then I'd like just to have some discussion and deal with any other questions. Some links to our employment law update. I've put a link to ACAS. I love ACAS. Very simple, straightforward guidance. In addition, these are all in addition to the government guidance on gov.uk. I can't stress that enough. That's your go-to place for guidance and updates to guidance. But if you want a no nonsense approach or a different tack on it, ACAS is great. A couple of links there to HSE documentation, again around risk assessments and that kind of thing, but also the mental health and wellbeing. There are some toolkits there. Use them. There's some really good stuff and free. It's free. So take advantage of that. My team are here to support. There's lots of businesses on this call who I dare say can support us in our transition back into a workplace. But one of the things that I've been working on reframing for my businesses is looking at our service offering and putting in place some very cost-effective and value-add retainers. So there is a fixed price for essential HR services for business, because let's face it, as we go back to work, we are going to be cost conscious, and we're going to want to be budgeting for these kind of things. I have got some fixed price options if you do find yourself in the unfortunate position of needing to restructure or considering redundancy options. So you can think of us there. And I've got ad hoc and on-demand solutions, so we can come in, do, and then go away again, or come in and do and be there in the background as a retainer, as an extension of your management team. I've also recently signed up to some HR software that I've looked at a few years ago, but it wasn't right time for the business, but now it is. So some award-winning HR software specifically designed for small businesses. What are the advantages of that? Well, it cuts down on your transactional workload. You can book holiday, you can track sickness, you can deal with all of your documentation and what's gone to and fro, and have those documents been looked at and read and audited in terms of being understood and abided to. The system can help manage all of that. And prices start from as little as £10 a month for a business with 10 employees. So it is very, very cost effective. Any of that is of interest, give me a shout. I've also put together a very simple checklist. It kind of worked for me. I did this for my business, so I thought, you know what, there's probably other businesses out there who will think this is useful. So it is just thinking about the practicalities, thinking about the people side of things. Again, there's a link to that if that's useful, because the worst thing for me sometimes is giving me that blank sheet of paper. So somebody gives me this, I'm like, where do I start? Because there's all this information. So I hope the checklist helps just give you a starting point and start thinking about those aspects that you need to be mindful of. Reiterating the government advice, we've just got to keep going, and we'll get there. But thank you for listening. I hope that's been useful. My contact details there for anybody who wants them. We will share these as after the call, and I will enlist Brooke in doing that. I will take my screen share off so I can see you all again, and let's deal with any questions. Silence. Has that been useful?
I've got a question, Ben. Sorry, can I ask a question, Ben?
Of course you can. Yeah.
I've heard one story from a developer we're working with who've made being aware of the point you made, the fact that everyone who's not been on furlough have been working very hard, and it's been quite intense. And actually, they've made the point they're considering rewarding those staff who've not been on furlough with actually an extra day's leave for every period of time they've worked. I just wondered if we've seen any of that coming forward. I can't remember the period they said. I remember hearing something about half a day for every week or something. But that seems an awful lot of leave. But just an extra bit of leave for every period sounded quite nice to me, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But whether you'd seen any of that moving forward as well?
I have seen a little bit of that, and I think that is it just helps to gain that buy-in from those who've worked all the way through, because again, I think how do we keep the momentum going? That's the question that I keep asking myself. How do we keep engagement? Because it's been tough. And it's one of the things that I've done with my team, because there had been a few of us who had, up until the 10th of June, worked all the way through. So it's only me who's worked all the way through and hasn't stopped, because I took a tactical decision to furlough those who I hadn't, simply because I just don't know what the future is going to hold, and if we might need to rely on the furlough scheme as we transition in through to the end of October. I hope things continue to pick up, but a reward for just sticking with is a good tactic, isn't it? And leave is always a good tool. You can manage that around business commitments. Although there's a cost associated to it, it is one you can manage, and most people, if they feel looked after and rewarded, will do a bit of extra, and ultimately, that mitigates the cost to the business. So I have seen some of that. I do think it's a great thing to do, and it hits people here, doesn't it? Because you don't have to do these things, but I think it helps just to, we're in this together, and that's how we're gonna move through and out the other end of this is by supporting each other. Every business needs to get back to doing what they do best, and spending money with other businesses and supporting us to grow and develop as we go forward. So great.
Just ask something on that as well, just following up. Yeah. I mean, I'm not in this particular situation because I've not had to furlough anybody, so I don't know. But I would assume that in the furloughing process there would either be some agreement with the people you're furloughing, or no agreement. You just you're the employer, you're furloughing them, deal with it.
Yeah.
But to then give the people that were not furloughed a reward for sticking with it when it's not their fault that they had to be furloughed.
Yeah.
I can see questions being asked that it's unfair.
Yeah. So I think there's always going to be it's a balance, isn't it? And I think because those staff who've had their wages topped up and they've continued to receive their 100%, will probably feel differently to those who've had their wages cut to 80%, for sure. Because ultimately, that hits us in the pocket. I wouldn't want my wages to be cut to 80%, but I'd rather them 80% than not have a job, if that makes sense. And so I think anything you do with rewarding and supporting staff, think about every eventuality and how you do something for everyone. Because as I said, we're in this together. We need to make sure we've got our team coming together, not driving a wedge. So I think there will be individual nuances in every single business that will dictate how and what you do for who, for sure, because there will be that question of fairness. You're right.
Can can I just say, Ben, we've always had a situation where we've had a particularly busy week that I will say to staff 2 or 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, just finished, that's it. As soon as you're done, just go and do whatever. And I will say that to them about midday, so that they know that if they finish their work by 1, 2 or 3, whatever, they can then just have the rest of the afternoon off. And that is just off. That is not leave. That is just off. And you know, it's just a bonus for the work that they've done, you know, so well. And we're continuing that with the staff that are working from home now. That particularly busy week, or I feel that they're suffering a little bit, then, you know, have a couple of hours off or whatever, you know, just finish what you're doing. And that seems to work very well. And that is appreciated. And it doesn't cost very much to do that.
No. And those things are great, because it's in the moment, isn't it? You're rewarding or responding to something there and then, and that's a great thing to do, and most staff really appreciate that. A few hours off on a Friday, he's gonna challenge that. But again, you know, the fairness and the perception of fairness across the team, you know, maybe that's something to do for those who are continuing to work, versus or in addition to the leave option, is a good suggestion. Maria, thank you for that.
We've done the leave option for those that haven't been furloughed. So about half the staff are furloughed and about half are still working. And probably like everyone, the ones that are still working, we're working like super hard. But we, our board decided to give everyone just a day's leave. So it was just, kind of use it, you know, now kind of thing. Thank you very much for sort of all your hard work over the last few months. So like you said, I think it goes a long way and just shows appreciation for the fact that they've all been working so hard. Yeah,
it does. I think, and it's a gesture, isn't it? And have you done anything in your business for those who have been furloughed? Have you put any additional support or measures in place, Melissa?
We've had a mixture of people that have been furloughed. We've had a couple have been furloughed right from the beginning through, but most people that have been furloughed and then have been coming back as well. So they've been back for a week and then going back on furlough. So we've been keeping in touch with them through that mechanism. But as you were sort of talking now about sort of fairness and stuff, I was thinking we haven't done anything sort of extra for the guys that have been furloughed. So I'll probably have to go away and think about that, how that might work. But yeah.
And it's tricky, isn't it? But how do you manage that? I mean, one of the things that I've had a couple of discussions with businesses that we support is thinking about holiday, and using holiday is a concern for some of my clients, and perhaps looking at a Christmas close down, if that's possible for their business, and how that works. But maybe giving an extra bonus day there, perhaps across the board, as a gesture might be a useful thing to do. And Christmas is one of those things, one of those times where often it's a true break, because whatever you leave is what you come back to, because most of us take a break over Christmas. Not all. There are some businesses and organisations who carry on all the way through, but it's an opportunity there perhaps to look at doing that.
I think the non-furloughed staff would be not be very happy if the furloughed staff were getting extra leave when they've been working full time, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but there's always a few, isn't there?
There is, and I think it will depend if they have, you know, how their pay is being structured. But like I said, the kind of conversation that I'm having with those who are furloughed and not furloughed is staff agreeing to be furloughed are helping the business. It may not feel like that when you're working, but they are. Otherwise, if the government had not put that scheme in place, we would have seen an awful lot more redundancy taking place. And okay, that does reduce cost, but there is a process to go through. There is a cost to make people redundant, and what we hope is that this situation will continue to improve, and they are remain low. You know, rates of infection and death rates continue to fall, and we get back to business as usual, or you know, get back to business, which we're going to need those staff again. So it's a really difficult one. There's no perfect solution to this, but I think the talking, the understanding in everybody's mind within the business, why the business has done certain things is key, so that they can tap into that and love it or loathe it, but at least understand that this is why we have done this, and this is our approach to it.
I think most of our team have been really understanding about being furloughed. I think it's, you know, most people, like you were saying earlier, Ben, you know, it's better to be furloughed for a couple of months than to be made redundant, and that was kind of the stark choice when we knew our income was dropping. So I think there will always be some people, but in the main, our team that have been furloughed have been quite okay with that. Lots of our team have young children as well, so actually it's actually been not so bad for them, I think.
I think also it's important to make sure that the furloughed members of your team feel that they're still a part of the company, but although they're not working. So, for example, we've got a quiz night with everybody tonight. I'm doing a quiz for the staff, so look out for that. It's going to be.
Does that mean we're going to see you on the chase, Maria?
I'm sorry, Tim?
Are we going to see you on the chase at some point then?
Oh Lord, no. But anyway, so that's happening. But also, we tend to provide coffee and teas and things, and chocolates and biscuits and things for people in the office. And I have been, when I've been sending chocolates or gifts of coffee or whatever to working staff, also the furloughed member of staff has been getting it as well, because I think it's important that they still feel part of the team, even though they're not working with the team.
Definitely. We've sent letters. We've sent letters and things to everybody from the board, so the furloughed staff and the non-furloughed, to say thank you equally. And we have a weekly kind of Zoom catch-up meeting with everybody that the furloughed guys can join, just like a bit of a coffee and chat catch-up. So
and it's a good thing to do. I've got a through the keyhole group meeting with my team today, so we've all been taking obscure pictures of our houses to see if we can get, but we try and do some just something a bit different every few weeks, and it's not about work, and it's about people, and understanding people and what they've been doing while they've been locked down, or working or otherwise, because I've had some very industrious people in my team who've been doing lots of things that they've put off for ages. They've been studying for courses and qualifications, some of them, just really, nobody's been doing nothing, if that makes sense. And arguably you could say that all supports the business in some shape or form at some point in the future, which again, we're all in it together, as I keep saying. But so Have those slides been useful that I've covered? Is that giving you some things to think about? Because as I said, there's no magic formula for this. My thoughts on how to prepare for this is to think about each of your businesses individually, and I've just posed some questions to get you to think about, how are you going to manage this, and talk to people, talk to other business owners and managing directors if you have those in your networks, because we're all going through the same things, and putting some things in place like an extra day's holiday, that has its pitfalls as well, but it's important to, praise is important, making sure that you do take that time to just say thank you for a job well done, because that does cost nothing, and can be quite personal to the person you're giving that praise to, and always goes down well. But yeah, so are there any other questions that I can help with?
Hi Ben. I was wondering if we can't support home working because our systems aren't in place in some departments, we're finding that now the business start picking back up, we're starting to ask people to come back. Although we've got all the safety measures in place that we feel we can, they still aren't happy about being in the office, and I'm not sure how we manage that, because their argument is, well, why can they work from home but I can't? Because we are trying to support it, but there is an area in our business where actually our systems don't allow it at this point.
Yeah, so that's your answer. Why can't they work from home? Because we don't have the systems to enable you to do that. Maybe they can work from home for part of their week, part of their working week, if there are some aspects of their role that could be done at home, but equally some aspects of their role that has to be done in the office because they need to access certain systems or programs, or information. So say you've got paper records, for example. I think dealing with any anxieties around going back to work only works by talking to staff and discussing the rationale with that. So that is the only way. But think about it in the round, because quite often there isn't, these things aren't completely hard and fast that it's one or the other. The likelihood is that there can be a combination of the two, but again, you just need to be clear on what your expectations are, and you want to make sure that if people are working from home, they're doing that safely as well. So does that help? But I think explaining when and how going back to work is going to look, how the social distancing will be maintained, and how you will juggle all of that is key, and then gain their agreement to do that.
If I'd like to think they wouldn't, but for example, what if they refused to come back into the office? Is that just a conduct issue then?
It's a conduct issue, unless they've got a really genuine reason for, so if they're shielding, you can continue to furlough them until the end of July. If they have childcare issues, that may be something that can be worked around. But if they're concerned about infection, then your risk assessment around the cleanliness, the hand hygiene, the social distancing, those are the things that most of our businesses need to focus on and worry about and meticulously make sure happen. And if you've done all of those things, then I think it's appealing to them about what else it is that is troubling them, so that you can consider that and see what else can be put into place to take that away from them. But ultimately, I think if they still continue to refuse to come in, you have to consider whether you carry on paying them. It's your choice as the employer whether you furlough staff or not theirs.
Yeah, okay. That's really helpful.
There is some guidance around exactly that on ACAS. If you follow that link that's in my slides, there is a snippet, literally a paragraph or so around managing that, and it says what I've just said to you. You know, you are just going to have that conversation with them about, well, you know, we need this work done, unless there's something that you feel that you need to put into place to make work as safe as you know, reasonably possible you can, because you can't mitigate every single risk. But you have to follow the government guidance, and if you're doing that, then it is, you know, it is something that is going to have to happen sooner or later. Some businesses I've seen have started to consider taking health declarations from people or from visitors coming in. So to give you an example, you know, I have some businesses who want to use my training space to do some socially distanced training. So I've been really busy getting the first floor of my building just zhuzhed it up a little bit, put some new paint on the walls, and move the tables around, because of course we would normally do training in a horseshoe, but we've kind of done it in a socially distanced fashion. But it means that training can carry on, because there's people who are desperate for some mandated health and safety training, and just starting programs we started in January, and get those back on track. And we can do that, and I'm really pleased that we've got the facilities to be able to do that. So we've gone from our smaller training room into this enormous room, where we can keep that social distancing, and I hope that that's really successful for my business in terms of starting the training programs again, and the other businesses who want to start to run their training programs again. So but health declarations, the one thing, you know, that if anyone is ill, we've all got an obligation, or if anybody doesn't feel 100% that day, then they shouldn't be coming into work. You know, perhaps they can work from home, but you know, if you've got a sore throat or you know, a bit of a cough, you're not going to come into the office, are you? Or you know, you shouldn't be, and they should be asked to leave if there's any concerns around people's fitness for work, just like you normally would. Any other questions? Has it been useful? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Yeah, good, lovely. I will work with Brooke. We will get these